to keep child abuse a secret is what makes the church complicit in the spreading growth of child abuse.
Have in here all of my keepsakes, family photos that I have left from when I was a Jehovah's Witness.
What about this one?
I was probably 14. It was just before. Yeah, just before.
What was your mindset like before it happened versus after?
There was that change of being carefree, and the world was safe, you know, and I didn't really feel like I had to hide things.
Moriah was raised in Washington State in a family of Jehovah's Witnesses, a Christian denomination known for being insular.
So Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe that everybody goes to heaven.
And in 2012, when she was 14, she met a 25-year-old man named Eliu Rodriguez at her father's congregation.
He started to hang out with the younger girls. Sometimes he'd be assigned into the same service group that I was assigned to, so we would get in the car and we'd go door to door preaching. He spent a lot more time trying to pursue my attention at the Kingdom Hall, and then it started to progress, and so Eliu suggested that maybe we start texting.
Did you think it was strange at all that a 25-year-old man wanted to text with you?
It was strange, but being 14, my head was more in the space of, oh, he likes me, and I didn't understand the inappropriateness of it. The way it was done seemed like he really was just trying to get to know me. It was very subtle, but then it started to develop a little bit more where the conversation started to steer to a more sexual place. So the flirting.
Moriah told us he convinced her they were in a romantic relationship, but that she couldn't tell anyone about it.
There are those feelings where, whether it's, you want to say it's your gut or that little voice in the back of your head that is telling you something's not right. For me, it's a sinking feeling in my heart and, a pit in my stomach. And it occurred, when Ellie would try and escalate things. The first time that he actually raped me, there was this feeling of I needed to scream, and I didn't. And granted, your body and mind go through a lot of different things when you're going through trauma.
Moriah 15 with Hillary and Father, annual memorial of JWs, of the Jehovah's Witnesses. When you look at this picture now, knowing everything that was going on, what do you think? Looking at yourself there.
I just look so young. I didn't have any eating disorders until the abuse occurred, and then the stress of keeping it a secret and the stress of meeting up late at night. Yeah, I was very exhausted, very depressed. Yeah.
That's a lot for a 15-year-old to go through.
Yeah.
And to not be able to tell anybody.
Yeah.
How did you cope during that time?
The abuse stopped when Moriah was 16 and moved across the state to live with her mother. She finally shared what had happened to her.
So after I had that conversation with my mom, she said, we're going to get through this together, and you're going to have to call the elders.
Elders are the local leaders for Jehovah's Witnesses congregations.
This is an adult man who had a very inappropriate relationship with a teenager who raped a teenager. So how did they handle it? Did they go to the police? Did they report him?
No, they did not go to the police. There was never once from the elders the word rape. Never was spoken to me. I was never told that it was not my fault. I was never told that it was non-consensual. There was no talk of that. And the things that they said and the punishment that was given, I ended up being privately reproved.
Did they talk about the age difference? Did they talk about this being a crime?
No. Nothing.
It would be years later, after Moriah decided to leave the religion, and when she was an adult, that she decided to call the police.
I'll never forget, I finally gave the report, and the man had been confused that took the report. And I was like, oh, he doesn't understand that this isn't a recent thing. This is a past thing. I said, I was 14 when this happened, and he was 25. And the man's whole tone changed, and he said, I understand, and I'm so sorry that this has happened to you. And I remember pausing. I'm gonna cry. Sorry. I remember pausing, and I just started to cry on the other end of the phone. And he said, no one's ever told me that before. And he paused and he said, what do you mean? And I said, no one's ever told me that it wasn't my fault. And he just paused and he said, I'm really sorry, but we're gonna get you help, and we're gonna have someone investigate this for you. But yeah, that was the first time that anybody had ever told me that it was not my fault.
In 2018, LEU was charged and later pled guilty to 3 counts of child rape for both Moriah and another young girl at the same congregation. But then Moriah took another step. She filed a lawsuit against Jehovah's Witnesses, locally and the national headquarters.
The charge was that the church had awareness. They knew or should have known that LEU had sexually abused other children prior to abusing Moriah and had the chance to prevent it, but didn't. They chose to take a path of really further victimizing Moriah and not doing the things that they should have done to protect her, including contacting the authorities.
Moriah eventually settled out of court. The Jehovah's Witnesses declined our interview request and in a statement said they don't discuss specific cases of abuse and that they comply with child abuse reporting laws. We wanted to get a better understanding of how Jehovah's Witnesses handle abuse allegations and if her case is unique.
It is the rule rather than the exception for elders not to report child abuse.
Mark O'Donnell was born and raised in a family of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's been a decade since he left the religion, working to shine a light on how they handle sexual abuse allegations.
These are documents involving the most heinous crimes against children that you can imagine.
How did you get these files?
These were all stolen.
These are stolen
These
files?
are the stolen documents. Around 2017.
In 2017, another Jehovah's Witness stole these documents from various congregations and sent them to Mark.
These were stolen from Massachusetts.
They offer a glimpse into what happens when elders receive information about abuse.
They're interviewing a minor 14-year-old victim who is about to describe what happened to her when she was 4 years old because it's bothering her. Did they penetrate your body? Answer, yes. Did Ernie? Answer, yes. Did Gary? Answer, yes. Were you ever threatened about telling anyone? Answer, yes. Gary, the other abuser, threatened to hurt my kitten if I told anyone. What is a child to do? The child has no agency.
And what did they do with this information?
So they conducted an internal church investigation, and ultimately they did nothing with it. They very rarely ever report to the police an allegation. They have a very specific procedure, and the procedure is, number one, they call the legal department in Paterson, New York. And what they're doing is they're advising these elders whether or not they have an obligation to report to the authorities. These are some extremely serious crimes which would make the average person just shrivel up and cringe. Anyone, if a doctor or a nurse read this and it was their patient, they would immediately contact 911 or contact a local authority or Child Protective Services. But no, they strictly go by the cold and calculated rules of the Jehovah's Witness legal department, which says, are you under obligation to report? How long ago did it happen? And they ask all these details to determine whether or not they would even consider reporting.
Whether clergy are obligated to report abuse to authorities is different from state to state. In Washington, they're not listed as mandatory reporters.
So there's a list of mandatory reporters, including people like police or teachers or doctors, and clergy aren't on that list.
What kind of impact do you think that that law has?
I think it makes it easier for clergy to hide sexual abuse. And that really matters when there might be a church or an organization that wants to keep these allegations secret.
In 2022, Wilson investigated cases of abuse within Jehovah's Witnesses congregations, including Moriah's, but also going back to the 1970s.
And it was also surprising how often I would contact someone who is a former witness or a current witness who said, yeah, I know someone who was abused, or this guy was at my congregation and it turned out that he had been arrested for child molestation before, or something like that. So it was very present on everyone's minds.
Insular communities, whether it's the Amish, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, the people trust their local elders. They trust their local bishops. They trust, the system that they have in place. So much so that there's room for too much abuse because they trust these people.
The clergy penitent privilege has also been applied in cases involving the Jehovah's Witnesses and Catholic Church, even when a victim reports.